All right, let's kick things off by covering what in the world is HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And what this mumbo jumbo gibberish means is that HTML is not a programming language. It is in fact a markup language. Okay, that is good, but what makes HTML so important and well worth our time learning it? You see, HTML is responsible for the structure of the web pages. And that makes HTML elements the building blocks of the web. HTML elements are represented by the syntax content in between the tags. More precisely, opening tag, which consists of the name of the element we would like to use, surrounded by the angle brackets. Following the opening tag, we have the content that will be displayed on a web page. And after that, we have another tag, this time closing tag. In the closing tag, we need to add / before the name of the element. So essentially, if we would want to have a heading in our project, we would create a heading tag or heading element with the text we would want to display on the page. And once we do that, the heading would be displayed on our web page. If we would want to add a paragraph, we would create a paragraph element. And if we would want to add an image, we would do the same thing. And hopefully you get the gist. Some elements consist of only one tag. So essentially, they don't have a closing tag. For example, image and line break elements. In those cases, we would add a / at the end of the single tag. I would like to mention that starting with HTML5, we could technically get away with it and omit the / altogether, and everything would still be displayed correctly. But for example, React, the most popular JavaScript framework on the block, has stricter rules and throws an error if the / is missing. Just to give you an early taste of HTML, let's open up a new browser window and navigate to literally any web page. Now, depending on the complexity of a web page, there are going to be a lot of other things as well, but we'll definitely see HTML in action. So I'm going to open up a new browser window, and then I'm going to look for ESPN. And once I'm going to navigate to a page, I'm going to open up developer tools. Please keep in mind during the course, of course, we're going to cover how we can do that. But for time being, I'm just going to right click it. Then I'm going to look for inspect elements. And if you're going to take a look at it on the left hand side, you're going to see a bunch of opening and closing tags. And that is essentially the content that is displayed on the page. So regardless of how complicated the actual page is, we always are going to use HTML in order to structure web pages. And that's why when it comes to web development, HTML is so important. In order to do any kind of web development, we for sure will need two things: a text editor to create and work on our project, and a browser to test our results. Well, there are many options out there. For this course, we will use Google Chrome as our web browser and Visual Studio Code as our text editor. While I can go on and on about why I picked these two specific tools, in a short one-sentence answer, both of them are industry leaders and provide awesome development experiments. Both of them are for free and require just a simple download. While it's not a requirement, meaning if you prefer other browser or text editor, feel free to use them, since you'll still be able to follow along with the course. If you want the same exact results as me all the time, I would suggest using both of these awesome tools. And I guess we're going to start by downloading Google Chrome browser. And in this case, I'm going to use the default browser that is on my operating system, which is Safari. And yes, as a side note, of course, since I'm using Google Chrome daily, I already had it on my machine. But since I wanted to start together with you from scratch, I deleted it, and now we're going to install it together. So like I said, I'm going to open up my default browser. Then I'm going to look for Google Chrome in the search. So let's type Google Chrome. And then the first link is obviously going to be a link to official Chrome webpage. We're going to click on a link. And then once we do, we right away going to see on a screen that they detect what operating system we're using. In my case, that is Mac. And we just bravely click on the link, download Chrome for Mac. Once we do, we're going to navigate to another page where essentially they tell us what we need to do. So we are going to get the installer, then we're going to drag it to our application, and eventually we're just going to open up the web browser. So let's follow these 3 steps. So I'm going to look for my downloads. I'm going to open up the installer. Then once I do, of course, I'm going to have to just wait a bit. As you can see, the process is taking place right now. And then once we're complete with this step, then of course we're going to have our Google Chrome application. Then after that, my next step is going to be drag and dropping the Google Chrome into my applications. And once that is complete, then of course we can just inject the installer. So let's wait a few more seconds. And then once that process is complete, then I can navigate to my installer and I can just eject it. Okay. Once that is done, then you can use my Finder again, or in fact, I can use my Launchpad, and then I can look for my Google Chrome. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm right away going to right click it, and I'm going to keep it in the dock. And in this case, it's just going to ask you whether we would want to open up the application since it has been downloaded from the web. Yep, we're going to say that that is true. So like I said, again, I'm going to use option where we would want to keep it in the dock. And then I would want to right click it and essentially just open up the Google Chrome browser. Now you don't have to follow the steps that I'm going to be taking, but I'm going to set this as a default browser. And as you can see, it right away gives you this option where you can have it set as default. So first of all, let me show you. This would be if we zoom in, and this is going to step that I'm going to take. Again, you don't have to do it, but this is just going to make it easier for you. I'm going to click on it. Then I'm going to say use Chrome. And now this is going to be set as my default browser. Now, also one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on my browser window. So that way you can see clearer everything that is happening. Again, that is probably not something you need to do. But for me, since I'm recording the screen, I think it's just going to be easier if you're going to see everything clearer. And the way you can zoom in and zoom out on the browser is just by pressing Command and plus and minus. So as you can see now, I'm zooming in. And if I press Command and minus, then I'm going to be zooming out. Once we have downloaded and installed Google Chrome browser, why don't we put it to good use and do the same thing with Visual Studio Code, our text editor. So this time I'm going to open up the Google Chrome browser. Then I'm going to look for Visual Studio Code. And of course, let me show you what is the proper text that I'm typing, like so. Then I'm going to zoom out again. And then in this case, we're looking for this link. We have Visual Studio Code. And obviously, in this case, we're going to be navigating to a homepage. Again, we navigate here. We right away can see that they are detecting our operating system. Again, in this case, it is going to be Mac. We click on it and we're starting to download the installer package. Of course, if you're using the different operating system, they're going to provide you with different installation package. Now, once the download is complete, then I'm going to look for my downloads folder, like so. Again, let me show you. This is my downloads folder. And right next to Google Chrome, of course, I have my installer package from Visual Studio Code. I'm going to crack it open. Now I have my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to double click, like so. Left double click. This is going to open up, of course, the application. I'm going to say yes, open. I would like to do it. And also, I want to drag and drop it into my applications. So I'm just going to grab Visual Studio Code. I'm going to hover over applications, and now my Visual Studio Code is going to be in the applications. And also notice here in the bottom, and by the way, I closed it, but notice here in the bottom, I also have an option of keep it in dock. I'm going to click yes, and now I'm going to open up right away from the dock. And now successfully, we have downloaded both things. We have downloaded our Visual Studio Code, the text editor we're going to use for the remainder of the course, as well as the Google Chrome browser. Okay, with both of our downloads complete, why don't we quickly take a look at the Visual Studio Code. Now, I'm not going to do an extensive introduction because I would want to get up and running with HTML, but I'm just going to give you a general overview. And then the more and more we're progressing with the course, of course, we're going to come back and we're going to explore Visual Studio Code in a bigger detail. First of all, this is going to be a welcoming screen. In your case, if you just installed the Visual Studio Code, you're probably not going to have recent projects. The only reason I have it is because, of course, I deleted it again, the same as with Chrome, and then download it together one more time together with you. Now I'm going to close this up. So I'm going to close the tab. And then on the left-hand side here, you can see that we have the icons. We have the Explorer. This is going to show us all the files we're going to be working on. This is going to allow us to search for files. This is going to be the source control Git, which we're going to cover a little bit later in the course, and also debugging. Now, I can tell you right away that most of the course we're going to work with Explorer, and then once in a while we're going to look for the bottom one for the extensions. And essentially, extensions are just a way for us to add some additional features to our text editor. And then as you're progressing, let's say if you're going to be working with JavaScript, you're going to get some extensions for JavaScript. If you're going to be working with React, you would get some specific extensions for React. In our case, we're going to get few of them. Again, we're not going to get tons in the beginning because I would want to progress with actual HTML. But as we're working, we're going to explore extensions more and we're going to download them. Now, let me show you how the extensions would work. So these would be all the extensions you can search for, of course. Now, the fastest way to search for them is just going to be typing here. So let's say if I'm going to say JavaScript, and then you can see that we have tons of extensions available. And once I'm going to show you how we download the first one, then you're going to be able to see the extensions that you have in your text editor currently. Because, of course, at the moment, we don't have any. Like I said, most of the time we're going to work with our Explorer. And as far as Explorer, we have the sidebar. This is where we're going to see our files. So in this case, this is going to be, I don't know, the folders we're going to use, the files we're going to use, and all that. And then here on the right-hand side, this is where we're going to be writing our code. So two places. On one place, we're going to have files. And then on the second one, we're going to have the code that we're going to be typing. So the web pages or projects we're going to be creating. And then all the way in the bottom, one more important thing that I would like to cover is the fact that for each and every editor, you can customize the settings. So essentially things like font size, things like what is the zoom level, and that sort of thing. And we have two ways how we can operate that. First, we have this option where essentially we have the GUI. And again, in this case, I'm going to zoom in. Notice we have, for example, font size. So at the moment, this is 12. So essentially, obviously, we're going to change it a little bit later to a different font size. And then we have, for example, tab size. Now, if you would want to search for something, of course, the same thing. We can search here up on the top. But we also have another option, and that is working with a JSON object. Now, I'm going to change my font size just so you can see what we're going to have within JSON. So let me delete it. And then in this case, I'm going to say that font size is not going to be 12. It's going to be 22. We're going to save that. And by the way, this is saved automatically. But if we navigate to a JSON, notice right now I have editor font size. So this is what I'm seeing. And now, of course, this is going to be 22. Now, what I can do right now is I can change it back here to a 30. Why this is important? Because for some of extensions, you're going to add some information within the JSON. So some extensions require for you to actually set it up your text editor in order for that extension to work. So this would be general overview of the Visual Studio Code. But again, please keep in mind as we're working, of course, we're going to explore more things in detail.